Hi, this is Michelle from Dasami Publishing with yet another episode of Dasami Bookworm Podcast. And today I'm delighted to speak to our self-publishing author who is going to take you on his journey. Of his first part will be about his writing journey, and that is Paul Wandrum. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you, Michelle.
So it's a very exciting time for you now as we're getting into the process of doing editing. But tell me about your journey of writing, because you didn't start with a novel. You've actually written more historical books.
Yes, I've written historical books based in my hometown of Paisley. So I started doing that in 2017. Just basically research and then basically writing books, because in my town there's been such a rich heritage, and I wanted to showcase that at the same time as actually, studying writing at university.
Excellent. What's one of the most fascinating pieces you found out about Paisley history?
Definitely the Buchanan witch trials in the Christian Shaw case, which is actually, it's the bewitching of Christian Shaw, and I actually found out the actual execution site and that's actually my local town as well. So I researched the area, old maps from 17th century maps, you name it, I did it, so. And I showcased that in my books as well. So
excellent.
They're actually quite popular amongst the local bookstore, Abbey Books. They sell the books on a regular basis. So, yeah.
Oh, wonderful! And what's the name of that bookstore again?
Abbey Bookstore in Paisley. Yeah.
Oh, wow! So, witch trials, that takes you back. So, how do you start when you're starting reviewing history? How do you actually find that? What's the process that you use?
Most of the library and stuff as well, historical researches in archives and stuff as well. I researched the case,
So you start with one, it's like pulling a thread and then you find another?
That's it, exactly, yeah, and just go from there. Yeah, I've always had such a keen interest in history, and because I had a keen interest in history most of my life, I felt really good writing about it as well. So
excellent.
Yeah, and it got me in the mood for writing on a regular basis too. So.
Wonderful. So it's writing in a historical, so that's nonfiction. How did you get to that transition of going into fiction? What inspired you?
University and just my love for fiction books growing up. I've always sat down with a book and thinking, a book transports you to a certain place. You can get lost in a book and thinking, that'd be really magic if I could actually take people like that. I could take people on that journey. I can actually do this. So I'd done a few courses at university, just modules at the time, and then I started to gain credits at university, and I'm going, I think I can actually maybe one day try and maybe do something in fiction. So and that's what I started doing. So using some of the historical knowledge I had before, but history as well, so I wanted to merge the two. So, and that's what kind of gave me my idea for this upcoming novel. So.
Is there one process that's easier than another? Is creative writing easier or just different than historical writing?
I would say it's just different, yeah, definitely. It's definitely more exciting, I would say, than historical writing, even though historical writing does excite me quite a lot then, because, when I'm writing fiction, I'm dying to know where the story's going to go, because I don't know where it's going to go, so...
I know, whereas in history, it's been written, someone else is taking care of that kind of thing. Yeah. For the writing process, because this is your first novel, how did you start with the writing process, and is there one in particular that you do follow?
You see, I was asked this question in university years ago. We were supposed to sit down and write and share with the class, what is your writing process? And then some people answer, I like to curl up on the sofa and a wee blanket and, the fireside and take notes and stuff like that. And mostly what I've learned actually, creative writing is actually just sitting down and getting it done. That's what gets the pages going, Just wake up every day and just say, look, this is what I want to do every day, and just take a shot at it, and that's it, And that's been my inspiration for that. That's my process, so.
And how do you write the story when you first write it?
Usually, I've actually been planning it out. It starts off with a small idea, and then maybe I start putting like a backstory in there. And then I go from there with maybe historical dates and stuff like that as well. So I make a timeline. That's what I usually do. I make a timeline. Mm-hmm.
So the timeline starts a story. So with the creative story, that you've gone through that process. Now you've had to create characters. How did you do that?
basically just it's pretty much the same sort of way. With characters, it was more like say for example, you've got the antagonist, protagonist. Usually when I start my stories, I've always actually written the stories in first person, but I read a lot of James Kelman back in the day, and sometimes he can actually go between first person back into third and back into first person. So I'm just going to experiment with that until it was ended in failure, but I'm just going to take it one step at a time.
Well, there's many processes, and that's part of being a writer, that we do try a process and then that doesn't work, and then we try another process and then that does work. So it's continuing education for all of us. What do you enjoy most about the creative writing process?
It's very, very fulfilling, because I'm getting to do something that I actually enjoy,
And enjoying it when you're writing. So it's the
process,
creating process. Now, when we were chatting about this earlier, you do longhand writing.
That's right. Yeah, that my writing process is I write my notebook first, and then I actually go to type. So I've always felt comfortable that way. Some people, the writing process is they sit in front of the PC, and then I've heard that writers, they play live music and stuff to sort of clear their head and then start typing. Let the words flow. I don't really work that way, so unfortunately, there you go. So,
some of the most famous authors have done that. They've done it in longhand first.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, that's good.
Then, yes, very famous authors have done that. So it's always a great start. The writing and creating process is personal to each writer and whatever they follow, so they don't have to conform to doing it on typing first or whatever, because sometimes that clinical keyboard can keep you off, whereas the pen and paper started with that.
Absolutely, can keep you hooked.
Absolutely. When so do you tend to write for longer periods at a time? Do you write for shorter periods, or just does it depend on the time that's available as your...
Time that's available, I try and aim for at least an hour and a half each morning. That's what I usually try and aim for. But sometimes I can just get lost in it, and even if it's a movie on or something like that, I'm actually, this telly's not too good in it, I may as well just start and get back to my writing. It's actually addictive to me. That's the way this fiction has actually it's been quite addictive to me. So
that's a true writer, is when it's an addiction and you can't do without it. That makes all the difference in the world. It really, really does. Now, talking about writer's block, which hits all of us sometimes, is there a technique that you do when you hit writer's block?
I read an article by Stephen King years ago, and he said that the best thing for writer's block is just to eventually try and write through it. Although today, from my discussion, I don't think maybe sometimes it's best to, there's certain moods you can be in when you're writing. I've heard people write with a bottle of whiskey in front of them and writing in a bad mood. I could never write like that at all. I could always need a clear head. I need to be sober. Writer's block is really something it's difficult to get away from. So I guess you do eventually write through it, but I think a wee break from your writing, a wee bit, not too much of a break, but something.
And writing through it, sometimes when they call it white noise, you have to write through it, and all of a sudden the words that didn't make sense become sense, and then there might be a little short story in there, or a scene or something that comes from it. You never know. And fighting through it, some people just have to write for a living. You just sit down, you write, and writing for a living. When you write as a passion and want to make it a living, that's really a key aspect to being the difference between being a writer and an author. I heard a great analogy is that a writer writes and an author goes out and markets the books, and that's what makes the difference.
The businessman of the deal,
Yes, and two aspects of that. So you've got the creative side, and now I'd love to introduce Megan.
Hi.
Hello, Megan. You're doing a little bit more of the other side of it, more the business and working on that. So tell us a little bit about how what you'll be involved in, please.
So I'll be mainly involved with promoting on social media through Instagram, TikTok, we'll be on WhatsApp, we'll be on Wattpad as well, and we'll just be everywhere promoting the book.
My sister's a business side of things.
Which I think that's a perfect, absolutely perfect combination because you have the creative and then the business, and we'll get into a little bit more of the social media aspects of it in just a moment. So to go back to the writing aspect, will you, now that you're into the novel writing, are you going to continue to write historical books, Paul, or are you just going to focus on novels?
Yeah, I'm going to do both. I'm going to continue to do both, when I can. Yeah, definitely. Perhaps after this book's done, I'll probably get back and do another local history one in my town as well. Yeah, in between the two of them.
And actually, with access to all that wonderful historical information, you can incorporate that into
future fiction work. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, yes. And I think I might say, without giving away too much of the plot, that a little bit of history is in the book. So we'll introduce it. It's your new publication. Please tell the name of your book.
Demon's Fair, which is a supernatural thriller novel set in Glasgow.
I know, it's wonderful, and we're going to chat about that a little bit more in part 2 of our podcast. But part 1 is mainly about new writers and the writing processes. So with your writing process, was it, when you started it, how long ago did you first start the story, Paul?
I started Demon's Fair in 2019. Originally didn't really kind of started out of nothing, to be quite honest. It was actually part of one of my writing tutorials at the University of Glasgow. I took it home and it just grew legs from there, sometimes.
Absolutely. When you first started it, what was the what intrigued you about it? Did you start with a scene of something that happened, or did you start with your characters?
I started with a scene, taking place in a city setting. So it was I started with quite an intense scene, and I wanted to see how it played out. I wanted to I wanted to see how this go, and it was just a joy, experimenting with all that as well. It really was.
I know a writing process is very different, and especially if you can even start with a short story and then it expands into something else.
I read someplace that short stories are kiss, whereas a novel's like a full-blown relationship or something. I read something.
I love that analogy. I think that's great, and it's true because a short story. There was one. I'm trying to remember it, and they turned it into a novel, so it can develop more into that. So, with your process, so it started in 2019. When did you feel that it started to become a novel, and what was your first step?
During lockdown, when lockdown with the pandemic, I'm thinking, well, I'm 80 pages in, so I may as well at least try and go a wee bit more, so, yeah, that was pretty much it, yeah. Plus I loved what I was doing, and I think, I could really make this book special here, actually, so, because it's not every day, people sit down and write 80 to 90 pages anyway, so.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, it takes a lot. In fact, I think we were chatting about it before. It's National Novel Writing Month in November, where you have to write 1,677 words, not pages. So that is a challenge to actually stick to that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think that's where the writer's passion comes through. So by the time you were done, before you decided to publish it, how many pages did you have?
It was 189 exactly. Yeah, 189 pages.
And
it's still going up just now.
Oh yes, I have a feeling it's going to grow. It grows arms and legs.
Yeah.
So now the first part is about your writing. And we're going to have a second part where we're going to talk about the publishing. However, you decided to go down the road of
self-publishing, yes.
Excellent. What made you decide to do that?
Probably just more freedom as a writer. I had submitted some short stories and stuff before to actually mainstream publishers. No luck, which is fine. Which is you can take the rejection, but I think self-publishing is actually the way forward. I can see it's the way of the future. To be quite honest with you. It gives a lot more writers a lot better opportunities to actually get their name out there, to get their creativity out there. Actually, that's the thing about it. And this is where Jasami stepped in to help me. So it's been one of the best moves I've ever made. So.
Oh, thank you. We do love to hear that. Of course, when we're going through the editing process and such, which we're going to talk about in part 2, that does make a difference. One thing that you've said that's very important, Paul, is that your favorite writer, Stephen
King, Stephen King.
Stephen King. He has written a myriad of books. And actually, I read not too long ago, I think it was about 6 months ago, that he actually self-published one of his later novels so that he didn't have to change what was written in there.
Yeah.
And that's the difference in that when you do sell the book, when you sell the rights to the book, the creativity goes with it. So if the publisher wants to change something, then they have to go along with that. Whereas when you do self-publish, you keep your creative continuity, your creative copyright, your creation, so
Yes.
that the characters don't have to change. John Grisham started off by self-publishing because he couldn't get someone to publish.
Oh, I never knew that bit.
So yes, so there's quite a few that have actually done it. But Stephen King, he went through it. He had already been published and decided to self-publish. So he's so well known that wasn't difficult for him. John Grisham, he couldn't sell the book, and then he self-published, and then someone created an interest in him. So you never know where that will go. I think the writing process and the creation process is really important, and I think this podcast needs to focus on the fact that no matter who you are and what part of life you are, that you can write and you can start that process. And it can start as a short story or 80 pages, and it can grow from there.
Yeah.
What advice, Paul, would you give to to writers who are just beginning and may seem frustrated and don't know what to do? What do you think is most important for them?
Just have confidence. I mean, the very first page, it's a cold, hard start, as I used to say. You know, when you see a blank page and you're just trying to get the words there, but perseverance, that's it. That's all it is. It's just pretty much perseverance. But at the same time, you know, make sure you're not depressed. Make sure you're actually enjoying it. Make sure you've got it in your head that, you know, I want to wake up and I want to try this. Even if you're just trying, you know, you're only getting maybe a couple of sentences each day. As long as you're enjoying it, you know, that's the main thing.
Excellent. Well, wonderful. Now, I always embarrass our guests, and I have to wait to the last minute to say, all right, we finished with shout-outs. Who would you like to give a shout-out to?
Oh, okay. Shout out, I would probably, to my brother Joseph, my little brother Joseph Wandrum, yeah, just like the, yeah, he always encourages me to, he encouraged me with my history projects as well, but he's liking the fact that I'm trying fiction now, so yeah, so my little brother Joseph Wandrum, so he was at high school today, he's in an exam, so
I'm sure he'd rather be here.
Yes.
We're at the lovely Mitchell Library at the moment, where everybody is studying, they're having coffees and chatting about books, working on books, or they're just reading in the background. So if you hear those noises, I just wanted to let you know that we're out in the real world where we love to be. My shout out will go to all of the writers, beginning writers, who actually don't know where to start. Start by writing those first few words. Write that page, then follow with another page, because the encouragement that you receive is most important. So thank you, Paul. Thank you, Megan. And you'll be joining us for part 2, where we're going to go on to the next step about the writing process, which of course is publishing, or self-publishing in this case. So thank you all for listening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And this is Michelle at Jasami Bookworm Podcast. As always, wishing you a sunny day.